In the article The Myth of the Ethical Shopper, author Michael Hobbes discusses what it means to be a responsible consumer. He evaluates whether being an ethical shopper is possible at all. The author's thesis lies near the end, that the global supply chain is so interdependent and tangled that boycotting suppliers who uses unfair labor is impossible. The path to better labor standards for workers in developing countries is through advocating for bargaining rights and complaint mechanisms, things that are much less gratifying than organizing a boycotting campaign, as summarized by the author's statement, not by imploring people to buy better, but to give them no other option. As the highlighted passage shows, boycotting campaigns have failed because the complexity of the globalized world means that advocacy campaigns cannot affect the labor standards in these factories. The author accuses activists of acting emotionally, only demanding quote unquote pedantic and uncompromising standards that does not help factories take better care of workers, but only to help activists feel like they are achieving something. His accusatory attitude affects his word choice. For example, he directly criticizes a narrative that he sees as quote unquote bullshit among some journalists who decry the rise of fast, cheap, high turnover fashion, such as the John Oliver expose. As seen here in the passage, as the music swells, all the shoppers press donate. He subtly mocks the methods of some advocates for labor standards to tug at the heart of their audience. He thinks they are overly maudlin, deriding their attempts as ineffective and insinuating that they are manipulative, which is not necessarily the case. How boycotting has failed to disincentivize companies to improve labor standards. He argues that blaming the companies and waiting for intrinsically motivated change is not effective, and that the company merely shifts blame towards other companies, acquiring an air of plausible deniability. My interpretive bias comes in two sources. My strong interest in social justice means that I am a little defensive about his claim that tactically boycotting doesn't work, and I feel he is a bit dismissive of efforts to advocate for better labor standards. For example, he argues that it's not the largest and second largest company we should be worried about. However, he does not give any clear statistics for the likelihood for violation between these two companies. I tried to mitigate this bias by considering his claim that the world is a complex place and that black and white strategies do not work. For example, my parents are business owners in Vietnam, and I know businesses that use suspiciously young people as their workers. They are very poor people who cannot be in school because public school in Vietnam is not free and their parents are very poor. Therefore, there is some ethical framing involved here in order to balance their rights and their utility. For more context on the issue, I watched John Oliver's piece on fast fashion. Its focus on large corporations made me question the author's claim that H&M is less likely to use sweatshops than Dumbo. I also read Naomi Klein's piece on sweatshops called No Sweat on how hard it is to create unions. It helps change my interpretation of the article by questioning the author's claim that creating formalized labor contracts is very easy, and it therefore requires support from the consumers, and therefore boycotting is necessary. I also read Nicholas Kristof's piece where sweatshops are a dream, that sweatshop jobs are actually the cushy jobs in the countries, and that if we are to increase labor standards, companies are going to move to countries with higher standards, leaving these workers with no jobs. This provided a counterbalancing opinion that, although I didn't necessarily agree with, it helped me think of the concept of stakeholder and shareholder. My conclusion from the article is that in the fight to increase labor standards, we have to include as many people as we can, the stakeholders, if you will, whether they are consumers in the developed world or workers in the developing world. Including more people in the dialogue for change is the only way progress will actually happen.